Hello, welcome to this Carrot Update brought to you by Powerfleet. I'm here with Thomas Watson, who is also a contributor to our FreightWaves community, Loaded and Rolling. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. But Thomas, talk to us about today's Carrot Update.
First off, happy Friday, and secondly, unfortunately, I think I was one of those guys who picked Kentucky. So
you and many others.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to win the cooler. And to be honest with you, the first price FreightWaves swag. So you know, a little bit of a moment of silence for my attempts at getting free items here, but. On the brighter side, at least if you're a shipper, it looks like, given we have the map here, we're looking at the country. I'm starting with the map again because I'm a very visual guy. I love colors. So, you know, the great cooling so far of volumes is kind of the vibe we're getting so far. So the situation right now is overall, if you're looking at our map here, we have the weighted rejections and outbound tenders. The skinny on that is basically we're looking at the extent of downward movement in rejections. Normally when you look at volumes and rejections, they are kind of parallel. So as volumes go down, tender rejections go down. Supply and demand. So what does that mean for the rest of us? Most of the parts of the country, it looks like we are still experiencing a decline in rejections. So we're going to get to our second chart and just drill deep into where are the rejections at. So we have like a bunch of lines here. The first one is total outbound tender and van are down to like 16%. So when we're looking at this, we want to not only understand the total rejections, but then also look at van and reefer and flatbed to get like a better idea of what the situation is. So flatbed, if you're looking at it, still extremely high. We're at 38.22%. And so, you know, when we're looking at this data, even reefers at 22%, you know, the entire story is most of our stuff right now that we're looking at is dry van, but the situation is if you are a shipper that is shipping, you know, open deck items, especially with infrastructure, you're still not having a fun time. And then also if you're a person who coming up with produce season, you're going to have some struggles. You know, it's still twice as much in terms of rejection overall.
Yeah, and that's right. If we're waiting on produce season, it's still going to be a few weeks away potentially when we're looking at when that's really going to start getting kicked off. Is that right?
Correct. And so when we have produce season, you know, we're starting to hear the rumblings of it. A lot of carriers that are refrigerated, they're operating in other areas of the country right now. So you are going to see this kind of migration of capacity from, you know, traditional like wintertime areas in your lanes, and then we'll start seeing the move over in areas of the southeast, other growing regions. Also, maybe potatoes in Idaho, you never know. I've had to run some crazy ones. If it gets crazy enough, they will throw it on a dry van, by the way. And then the worst one was apples. So you definitely want to have like, look at your apple juice producers and stuff. So when we're understanding like rates and stuff, we want to look at commodities as well. So a funny one is if you're a carrier in your dry van and someone offers you apples, don't haul the bulk apples. What will happen is they'll use the apples and they'll put them in a giant chute and they'll literally just throw them in there and basically it'll stain your boards and smell like apples. So.
Wow, and I never heard of potatoes going in a dry van.
We've done potatoes, we've done apples. If it's bulk and it's dry enough, of course, and the conditions are well, you can throw them in there and save some rate. So it's something to keep in mind. As we're looking at this reefer rejections around 22%, people will get creative. And so as a dry van carrier, watch out. Usually reefers can have metal floors. It's easier to watch out. You get like sticky stuff in your trailer, you're gonna have a bad time for food grade. So third chart here real quick is looking at the volume. So we talked about earlier just now the great decline of volume so far, and it's being reflected by not only the volumes but the outbound tender rejections, which is the smaller green line behind me. So as you see, we have literally a minor rise in volumes coming up at the beginning of March, but we are still trending downward, and we're seeing here that the outbound tender rejections are following. So, you know, when we bring up the first map, it's always important to see that there is a correlation between tender volumes and tender rejections to figure out how are we in the market right now.
That's right, and one of the things that I've been watching closely, especially from you, Zach, and Tony Mulvey, is what's happening with the rates right now. What's going on with contract and what's going on with the spot market to really kind of find out what the underlying trend is.
Correct, and so right now we've got, let's kick it over to the next chart. I have a fuel one, so this is going to influence our first one. I think the second one's going to be our rates. But so DOE fuel is still at $5.09. You know, we're hovering on the $5 a gallon thing. We see that there's a little bit of a plateau around $5.09 a gallon for our actual, you know, price being paid at the pump. And so, you know, when we're talking about how this has influenced rates, this is having a huge impact. Some carriers are sitting their trucks because they don't want to pay the costs. When we talk about that in a fuel surcharge, the issue is when it goes up so fast, you're stuck playing catch up. Once it stabilizes, it catches up, and when it goes down, you make a windfall. So how that impacts carriers is we may see issues with capacity, but if the fuel rate actually starts going down, you could potentially get a windfall on the difference, because it's usually at 1 week or 2 weeks DOE sliding average for your fuel surcharges.
Got it, Thomas. Always entertaining and insightful as well. Thank you so much for this update. Speaking of fuel, I think we might have a market expert that might know a thing or two about oil. Kaylee, who do we have?